Hello, everybody. Okay, today's episode is so good, you guys. You guys are going to freak out. We're talking about reframing your mindset around purpose. And obviously, I had to bring in the icon, the expert herself, Megan from She Lives Purposefully. One of my favorite podcasts. It's so good, it's so informational. And I'm obsessed with it. I'm obsessed with Megan. And I think you guys are just going to love this episode. And there are so many tangible steps in here. And you guys know how I feel about tangible, practical steps, as well as some encouragement. And you guys are just going to leave this episode feeling so much more equipped to step into your purpose and what that even looks like. What is purpose? All the things, we're getting into that. So let's join Megan in this conversation about reframing our mindset on purpose. Okay, Megan, I am thrilled to have you here, and I am so excited for today's conversation. I just already know it's going to be amazing. But before we start, I love to start each episode just talking about what we're drinking because it's so fun. So right now, I'm drinking a cold brew with a little sweet cream in it. That's it, though.
Ooh.
Nothing too crazy today. What are you drinking?
No, that sounds so good. I am even less crazy. Right now, I'm just drinking a latte with whole milk that I got from Starbucks. I feel like normally I try to have like this whole drink routine in the morning. Like I have my lemon water, bone broth, some sort of like latte, but today is just a coffee. The other
I
ones didn't make the cut.
Oh my gosh, well that sounds so fun. And you got Starbucks, so it's a good day. You already
I
know.
did. I got it and then I put it in a little mug, so.
It's even more special then. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, Megan, today I want to talk to you all about just like a purposeful living breakdown. Okay, this is your niche. This is what you do. I mean, you have your podcast, and I'm obsessed with it, which we'll talk more about at the end because we're obviously going to plug all of your socials and everything. But to start, I would just love for you to give me a definition of what it means for you to live purposefully.
Yeah, that's so good. I think what it really breaks down to for me is like going back to where purpose actually comes from. And that comes from the Lord, like as Christians. So for me to live purposefully is really just to live how the Lord calls us to. It's to glorify Him, to love other people, and to intentionally do that every day. And so really like what we dive into at She Lives Purposefully, living purposefully is what does that actually look like practically, like living for the Lord, living how He's called us to. But yeah, so I basically would say is living how the one who created purpose calls us to live.
Yeah, that's so good. And I love how it all ties back to the creator because, I mean, like you said so eloquently, like literally, he created us with a purpose. So all it
Yeah.
means is stepping into that purpose that we were designed for. And when you think about it that way, it maybe feels a little less intimidating because I think when you just look at the idea of like, okay, I need to live a purposeful life. Oh my gosh,
Yes.
that can be so overwhelming. Like, what does that even consist of? So that leads beautifully to my main question for you. The thing that I really want to get into is what are some tangible steps that you would say can really help someone who's maybe feeling a little overwhelmed with that right now of the purposeful living? What are some tangible things they can do to really step into that?
Yeah, yeah. Some of these things I feel like I'm going to say are going to sound pretty basic, but I really feel like it all goes back to it. So the first thing that I would say is really just seek again the one who actually gives you purpose. And I want to say that again in the most tangible way, like read his word, pray, be in worship. And because again, that's where your purpose is going to be found. So you want to get to know the creator of it. And two, when you're reading his word, a huge part of what I believe is living purposefully is living what he has already called you to do. We spend so much time, and two, sometimes rightfully so, trying to uncover what his plans are for us, what this big purpose could be. But he has already called us to so much in his word. And so, living that out and stepping into that and obeying him can all be found in his word, and that's all a huge part of living purposefully, being a good steward of what we're already called to and being faithful in the small things to then step into those other things later on. So tangibly, I would say like seek him hard, read your Bible every single day if you can, pray, worship, and then again step into the things that he has already called you to. I would even say too, like maybe even doing like a dive into what purpose is, because I think we can be so self-focused when it comes to purpose. This is something I've had to go through in my own life. Like I started She Lives Purposefully, and then I had this whole kind of revelation of like, wait, what even, is purpose? I think it's a little self-focused in my brain. So I've created a reading plan on purpose, and we have so many episodes on like what purpose actually is and what that means. So diving into that, like even if you go into Blue Letter Bible and just type in the word purpose and doing a study on purpose, I think can be really powerful too. But I really would say it honestly always goes back to like just seeking Jesus and doing whatever he has already called you to do. And if you're doing those things, he is going to guide you. He's a lamp unto our feet, and he's going to guide you into what your purpose is supposed to look like, or what the plans in your purpose is supposed to look like in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I personally have definitely struggled with that because purpose tends to shift into a selfish thing naturally, for me at least, where
Yeah.
it's like, well, it's my purpose. What am I supposed to be doing? And it feels very self-centered, just naturally. But I think that the purpose that we can really need to shift back to is, where is God calling us to serve others? And when we have that
Mhm.
reflective attitude instead of just absorbing everything we can into our own lives, we get to reflect the fruits of the Spirit and the love that Jesus calls us to and serve other people. And it's really not about us individually. So, you said you kind of went on this journey after you started She Lives Purposely. What did that look like for you? I mean, did you have like one aha moment, or was it like a really long path?
Yeah, yeah. No, it's funny because I started it. So I started She Lives Purposefully as a college project, and I was interviewing women on like how they lived purposefully and what that meant to them. And then it really pivoted to something very spiritual and Jesus oriented, and kind of focusing it on, who actually gives us purpose. And I found myself really struggling to communicate, like, okay, like balancing between like what is my purpose and wanting to do great things versus like, well, it's actually about the Lord, not just about me. And I forget the documentary's name, which I should know this, but I was watching a documentary, and somebody was talking about how they had this wrong perception of purpose and how we are so self-focused as a Christian culture often sometimes. And for me, that was my aha moment. I was like, oh my goodness, I think I've been thinking about purpose this way the whole time. So then that started a deep dive into like, all right, what actually is my purpose? Is it about me at all? And which, can really get into the nitty gritty of like, what if I step out of line into something that God doesn't want me to? Does that mess up my whole purpose or his plans for me? Or what if I never make it to be the specific thing? And I think we can put so much pressure on ourselves about what our purpose and plans are supposed to be, instead of, like you said, like reorienting our mindset to like, all right, being able to serve others, being able to glorify the Lord. And the things that the Lord puts in our paths and those plans that he has for us are all great, and he's going to guide us to those things. But our purpose is so much bigger than like the things that we achieve or we do or things like that. It really is ultimately like, okay, like who am I, like me and the Lord? How am I serving the Lord? How am I loving him? So yeah, all that to say, that was such a long answer to say that aha moment was totally it was in a documentary that I was watching, and I was like, my whole perception of purpose is so self-focused, and we lose so much, I think, in the power of what living purposefully looks like and the grace that we have in our purpose when we do make it self-focused.
Yeah. Wow, that's so good. And something that you just said that, just resonated with me personally is that the purpose isn't focused on achievement necessarily, because I think for
Yeah.
me, I struggle with that so much, where it's like, oh, am I doing enough to be in my purpose right now? So what does that look
Yeah.
like for you? Do you have any advice for someone who feels like purpose and achievement have to go hand in hand?
That's so good. Honestly, that's something that I am even working through right now. Like, I think it comes up every couple years where I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to recheck this place in my life. And I just was reading a book, I think it's called Why Grace Changes Everything, and it's by Chuck Smith. And it really resonated with me actually when it came to purpose. And my encouragement would be then to like really dive into grace and what the Lord like says about grace in our lives, because it's something that I do struggle with. And and I really associate like, all right, how many listeners am I getting, followers, this, how am I achieving, and correlating that with like pleasing the Lord. And the Lord does not care, about like the amount of listeners or followers or the achievements that I'm actually doing. But he does care about my heart, that I'm being a good steward of like what he's given me. But so my encouragement would be, one, read that book, Why Grace Changes Everything, because I think that applies even to things like purpose. And two, I was actually just at a Bible study last night, and we were talking about, I forget the passage, but it was in John, and they basically were like, how do we do the works of God? And Jesus's answer is just to believe. And I think even something like that really hit me, and it's like, yes, okay, like it's not about achieving all of the things. So my encouragement, one, really refocus on grace. Two, a big part of that too is I think like seeking the Lord every day so that you're able to reorient, like, okay, this is not about me, this is about you. And even asking the Lord, like, Lord, what would you have for me today? Like, how can I step into your plans? And, what does that look like? And I think reminding ourselves too that sometimes in the life of Jesus, that looked like slowing down. Instead of healing all the people, it's having a moment with this one person. And so that's going to look different, of course, for everybody, like what the Lord has planned for us. But recognizing like it doesn't have to be about doing all the things is so important, and has been something I'm honestly working through right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I just read that, like hit me so hard when I think I saw a post that you maybe did about that, where it was talking about how, achievement and purpose feel like they should go hand in hand, but that's not necessarily the case. And I also think something to add to that too would be, sometimes we feel like since it's our purpose, we have to do it on our strength. And that is exhausting. That is
Yeah.
so much pressure when
Yeah.
truthfully, we still rely on God and His strength and His guidance to get us through our purpose. And that's how it's meant to be. And I know I sometimes start to get in this mindset of, okay, it's my purpose. I need to do this. I need to push harder. I need to keep going. Like, I'm going to hold God back if I'm not working hard enough.
Yeah.
And I just, that's so tricky to try to unwind yourself from, because I feel like for hustle culture and just a lot of the way that we live our lives, it's very wrapped up in that mindset of needing to do more constantly, on our own strength.
Yeah. No, I think that's so good. Again, something I'm going through right now. And I was listening to a sermon a couple of weeks ago that was talking about anxiety and stress. And a huge part of it they related back to, and I felt at that time a couple of months ago, like very stressed and anxious in the area of like achieving and almost like earning my purpose. And like basically exactly what you were saying. It's like, I don't want to hold the Lord back from what he can do. And how am I going to achieve all the things? And this person was talking about anxiety and stress and talked about how a huge part of what can contribute to that is actually pride and thinking that it is up to us to achieve all the things. So that was such a good check for me in realizing I'm putting way too much pressure on myself because maybe I'm thinking too highly of myself. Everything that the Lord has given me is a complete gift. And yes, I'm called to obey and be a good steward, but it's all in his grace, and I am not able to do any of that on my own. And so I think, that's something I have to remind myself of, like, all of this is a gift from the Lord. Praise the Lord, but it's not something that I can do on my own. And even going through people in scripture, like you think of David and all that the Lord did in his life, but also all of the sin that he had done and repented of, and he was still a man after the Lord's heart, but he was not the one achieving any of these things in his own strength. We see so many of his failures, but the Lord is the one who is faithful, because David's heart is ultimately after the Lord's. And I think we can really apply that to our own lives too. Like, we are never going to be perfect. We're never going to achieve all the things, and we can't even achieve some of the things in our own strength. Like, it is in the Lord's. And yeah, just having that mindset, like reorienting back to like, this is between me and the Lord, and it's all in his strength. I really think we put so much pressure on ourselves to not only achieve all the things, but even sometimes like figure out the whole plan ahead of what God has for us. But he really never calls us to do that. He just calls us to follow him, to, walk with him, to have him be the lamp unto our feet. And that's what we're called to do. And we put so much pressure on ourselves to do so many other things, but he never called us to do all those other things.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. And especially, I love what you said about maybe not looking so far forward and not maybe thinking what's my purpose for the next 25 years. And
Yeah.
something that's been so sweet, I was talking to my husband, I was like, I'm so stressed about this and this and this and how's it all going to work out. And he just looked at me and said, remember that God only gave manna for a day. And he goes,
Mm,
it wasn't for that long. And literally, that was just like one of those things that, like, you know how some things just stick in your brain? That
yeah.
stuck in my brain so much. And now every time I start to panic or I'm like looking at bills or I'm doing something and I'm like, oh, I'm not where I thought I'd be or whatever, I'm like, you know what? I have the man I need for today. And I am like so incredibly blessed by God. And He's provided for me today. I'm not stressing about tomorrow or a week away
Yeah.
or a year. And so just kind of trying to reframe and remember that, right now, today, what can I do to live the life that God is guiding me towards, calling me towards, what I was created for, and not being so like overwhelmed with that big picture. And that's just such a theme that I see when we talk about this because it's so draining to look too far forward. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I love that so much. And I totally agree with you on everything you said. This has just been so fun.
No, I
um,
love that. I think that's so refreshing to just think of like, this is what the Lord has for me today. And he says that over and over again too, with those examples like the manna, but also just reminding us like, only worry about today because and ultimately today is all that we know that we have for sure. And it really creates such a dependency on him, which is just so beautiful and really like such a purpose in our whole lives is to be more and more dependent on the Lord and seek him more. So I love that you said that. That's such a good reminder.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. So, moving then to a few of okay, a question that I just love to ask people is your non negotiables, okay? Because you are a podcast host, a creator, you've got a lot going on in your life, and you are also very dedicated to your relationship with Jesus and your family, and it's so cool to see. So, I would love to know what are some of your non negotiables that you go through throughout your day to kind of just stay inspired with everything you're doing and stay on top of
Yeah.
everything?
Yeah, I love that question. Honestly, I think before this year, I guess I'll say like I think this year I really kind of revamped all of my non-negotiables. I really felt the Lord like calling me into kind of a reset and rest kind of focus because I was feeling the burnout hard and like doing all the things and being all the things and you feel like you're pulled in a million different directions and that can apply to anybody and burnout is so easy to come by and I was just like running myself dry in that area. And so one thing that is pretty much a non-negotiable for me, I would say. And it might sound corny, it might sound like just an Instagram reel that you're hearing, but like my morning routine is everything. I love it. I my morning routine is basically like I'll wake up, I do my skincare routine, I try to have lemon water, bone broth, I eat something I have to eat in the morning, I can't function without it. I try to get sun, vitamin D, I feel like is just so healing. I stretch my body, and ideally, too, I'm moving my body in some way, and then I'm spending time with Jesus as well. And two, just getting ready for the day. Even though I work from home, I feel like getting ready really helps me to actually feel energized. But my morning routine has become such non-negotiable for me where I have pushed back the start of my workday just to make sure that I can try to get all the things in. And I don't do it perfectly, but having at least some of those components in my morning is so important for me because I think it really helps me to feel refreshed not only outside of work but actually in the workday too and having more of a work-life balance. So that's been really huge for me. I think just being able to mentally slow down outside of work and be like, all right, I'm going to not look at this is actually a big one. Not looking at my morning routine like it's a checklist, but actually looking at it just like it's this time that I can dedicate to really myself and my relationship with the Lord. So I'm slowing down. I used to stretch almost like, all right, one, two, three, four, like just counting really quickly just to get it over with. And instead I'm breathing and listening to the Bible on my phone as I'm stretching too, just to really slow down. And I think that really helps to also take the pressure off myself because it's almost surrendering. Like I have to start at this time. And again, that's not applicable to everybody because sometimes we have 9 to 5 jobs that we have to go into for sure. But for me, it felt like I'm surrendering my business and its success to the Lord because I'm choosing to take more time with Him and take more time to just rest like my mind and my soul and my heart. So anyway, all that to say, my morning routine has been such a non-negotiable. Yeah,
That is so good. And I have never viewed my morning routine not being a checklist, because to me, checklists are satisfying. I need that
me
as a
too.
form of surrender. And that
Yeah,
is really, really powerful. Like, I love that idea. And I actually feel like this is definitely something that I'm going to try to implement more, because I am someone who's like, okay, it's 7:30 Bible study. You need to be done because I got to get going to the next thing because I've got more things I've got to check off my
yeah,
list. But that surrendering, just like heart posture, where it's like, no, you know what? My morning is going to be a little bit more relaxed because it's ultimately to worship God and glorify Him. So I need to surrender what I think that looks like. I love
yeah.
that. That is
I
so
love that.
good. Oh
Wait,
my
I'm
gosh.
curious too. What is something that is like a non-negotiable for you right now too?
Yeah. So um, it's not necessarily a daily one, but right now, taking a true Sabbath has been something that I've just recently gotten into this within the last probably like
No,
six
that's so
months.
good.
And it has truly become a non-negotiable, and it's just been so sweet. So I do the 24-hour Sabbath. Okay, so we start at like 6-ish, depending on when my husband gets home. He works on Saturdays.
Okay.
And then we go to 6 p.m. On Sundays, so 6 to 6. And it has become the sweetest thing ever. We do dinner out together on the Saturday, or we'll pick up food and bring it home. We take a nice slow morning on Sundays, go to church, and then we usually will do a really long walk. Like, we try to hit like 5-6 miles,
Mm,
and we just literally no electronics, nothing, and we just talk and hang out, and then just get to rest, and then we come home and take a nap. And it's just been the sweetest non-negotiable that I've added, and I feel like I have just gotten closer to my husband. I feel like I have gotten so much closer to
mm,
God, and I feel so much more at peace during the week, and I look forward to Sundays so much. So my non-negotiable right now is seriously just really, really the Sabbath, which always should have been. It should have always been that way, but it
yeah.
wasn't, because, again, I was like, I need to step into my purpose and I need to be doing more. And so I had to release
Yeah.
that part. And so this has just been probably my favorite non negotiable that's really had the biggest impact on me personally.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's something that honestly convicts me because it's a hard one. And I think too, because yeah, you feel like I need to achieve all the things every day of the week. And we've been trying to be more intentional about that, but we definitely could be more. So that's so encouraging. I love that. And two, like no technology, like you're totally like off the grid for the day, kind of. I love
Mhm.
that.
Yep, the only
Wow.
thing is I will sometimes take pictures just because it's fun to like
Yeah.
document some of it. But yeah, no, we don't do anything. Like, we don't really text anybody. We try not to really even call
Yeah.
anybody.
Like no
So it's
social
just,
media. Yeah.
yes, exactly. It's just a really
Wow.
sweet time. And I think the 24-hour has really helped us, because it gives me time to like do like like a Saturday reset. So like I clean everything on Saturday. My husband still has
Yeah.
to work, but then we're winding down, and then usually I get a little antsy by Sunday night because I'm like, okay, I gotta like plan my week out. I gotta like write down my to
Yeah.
dos. But it gives us the space then to not feel like crushed by the fact that we can't do that. So by 6
Yeah.
p.m. on Sunday night, we're, able to sit down and, we do budget meetings and discuss where money's going, and then we'll plan our weeks out. So it's good. I like it.
I'm like gonna write this down. That's so good because as you said it too, I was like, well, I have to plan my week, and you're
Yep.
like talking. I'm like, well, she did say 6 p.m. Like I'm like going through
Yes.
that with you as you, yeah. So that sounds good. And we usually do our budget meetings on the weekend too. So I'm like, all right, there's still time for, yeah.
Yep.
Wow,
Yep.
I love
It's
that.
so great.
Okay, cool, cool. I love that. Well, that's so inspiring. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh my gosh, of course. Thank you for asking. That was so fun.
I love
Oh
it.
my goodness. Okay, so I would just love to end this episode of, if you had any encouragement for someone who's listening and is like, my purpose feels so far away, or it feels
Mm.
impossible. What would you just say to someone who's maybe just struggling right now with that?
Yeah, yeah. Well, first and foremost, you have a God-given purpose. I am a firm believer in not only like that you have a purpose, but the season that you're in has a purpose. This day that you're in has a purpose. Truly, I really believe it. Like everything that we do, the Lord can bring purpose out of, in every season, however happy or heartbreaking, He can bring purpose out of. And So that's first and foremost, I would encourage you to really dive into that truth. I think it's really important. But two, my encouragement would be to really, really seek him. And I would start small. Start with the things that you already know that he has called you to, and called you to even obey him in. Like, who are people that you can love today? How are ways that you can glorify God where you're already at, whether that's your job or with your family, whatever that might look like, maybe at school, whatever it is. But yeah, my biggest encouragement to you would be to know that the Lord sees you, he loves you, and he has creatively created you with a purpose. Like, you're not an accident, you're not a mistake, and he's made you so intentionally for such a time as this. Esther is one of my favorite books because we see the Lord's hand weaved all throughout. Even though we don't actually see his name in the book, we see his hand and just like the attention to detail that he has, and we really can apply that to our own lives. You have a God-given purpose as a person and in today, and yeah, that's my encouragement to you.
I love it. Oh my goodness, and that's so beautiful. And okay, seriously, Megan, this has been incredible. One of my favorite conversations we've ever done, and I would love to know all of your details. So where can people find you? All of the fun things. This will also be linked in the show notes because I want to make it nice and easy for everybody to go start listening to your podcast and follow you on social media.
Yeah, you're so sweet. No, yeah, so you can find me basically everywhere is She Lives Purposefully. So the website, shelivespurposefully.com, Instagram, She Lives Purposefully, and then, the podcast on Spotify is also just the name She Lives Purposefully. You can follow me at Meg Pam with 2 G's on Instagram. But yeah, everything can be found basically through the site or my Instagram. But yeah, and then the podcast too is my baby. It's just one of my favorite places to be able to pour out. So I would love if you guys came and hung out on there too. But you have got a great podcast here too. So this was such a sweet time. Thank you so much for having me. But yeah, She Lives Purposefully basically on every platform.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. Thank you times a million for coming on and chatting with us all about just how to live a purposeful life.